Greetings in the name of the Lord. This is the course Look at a Journey into Divine Reality. Gabriela Tijerina is my name, and it is my pleasure to assist your learning in this course and in this material. So I hope that you are enjoying. You are in my prayers. This is lesson 7, and we title this lesson Look's Conditional Sentences. Number 1, there are going to be a series of three lessons in a row with combining different thoughts about the conditional sentences in particular. So, okay, don't forget to send me your questions, your comments, your inquiries, even your complaints. I accept everything. Okay. Lesson 7 has 3 sections: interpretative narrative method, practice look a practice in Luke chapters 16 and 17, and material to study. So let us start. Okay, our argument is that one of the greatest challenges we face today is not a lack of information, but a loss of connected thinking. Our attention is fragmented. We move quickly from one image, one video, one idea to the next, with little demand to remember what came before or to carry it forward. We are trained, in some ways, to think in compartments, isolated moments rather than connected arguments. As a result, we often forget not only what we have learned, but even the conclusions we ourselves have reached. Our reasoning becomes then passive, reactive, and easily reset. This is a serious setback because reasoning was never meant to work this way. Human thinking is designed to be active and cumulative. We reason by carrying knowledge forward, and if it is, for example, if it is cloudy, we take an umbrella with us, isn't it? And we are within through the day with our umbrella if we are in the street. And if it begins to rain, we use it, isn't it? Because we remember that the earlier condition. One condition prepares us for the next. Forgetting breaks the chain, remembering activates it. So it's how we, from one situation, we bring it to the other and we accumulate knowledge. And this is where this is also how learning has always worked. We learn letters before words, words before sentences. In mathematics, we learn numbers before addition, addition before multiplication. Each stage dependent, each stage depends on memory and continuity. When we forget what we have already learned, we cannot reason forward. We are forced to start over. This is where the literature of look at becomes a powerful training ground for recovering active reasoning. That's how I call it. Luke does not present isolated facts or disconnected stories. He carefully connects ideas, events, and truths in a coherent movement. His writing invites the reader to link what has been revealed with what follows. The narrative assumes memory, attention, and responsive and active and responsible reasoning. Explicit and implicit conditional sentences play a key role in this process. They function like sensors, alerting us to relationships in reality. If this is so, then something must follow, isn't it? These conditions help us pay attention to what God has revealed and guide us in connecting truths rather than holding them in isolation. Through them, Luke trains us to move between inductive and deductive reasoning, between concrete events and abstract theological meanings. He assists us. In this way, Luke Acts does not merely inform us, it reforms our thinking. It teaches us to it teaches us how to reason actively, how to carry truth forward, and how to build a coherent argument that remains faithful to what has already been revealed. So, to study this and to study then the conditional sentences, we will employ the interpretative narrative method. Interpretative narrative method. This interpretative narrative method is used to determine whether a biblical narrative functions as an interpretative narrative. This means we ask a specific question to the text. Does this narrative itself provide the interpretation of its meaning, or does it require the reader to supply meaning from outside the passage? A narrative qualifies as interpretative when meaning is communicated through the way the story unfolds. Interpretation is embedded in the narrative itself through events, dialogue, sequence, repetition, and narrative progression. The author intentionally arranges these elements so that understanding develops as the story moves forwards in the story. Okay, so this, do you remember what is this? This is inductive studies, inductive reasoning, but the narrative allows it by itself. So in an interpretative narrative, meaning is not left open for the reader to define on its own, like deductive. The author does not expect the reader to import external definitions or theological categories in order to understand key concepts. Instead, the narrative shows what those concepts mean. It's inductive. For example, when a concept such as love, faithfulness, or greatness appears, its meaning is clarified and illustrated within the narrative context itself. The reader learns inductively by observing how the concept is enacted in the story. Once a passage is identified as an interpretative narrative, we can conclude that it is not merely a collection of historical facts, rather, it is a carefully shaped form of storytelling in which events are deliberately selected, ordered, and connected to communicate meaning, worldview, and truth. The structure of the narrative is therefore essential to interpretation. The structure. Now, it is important to clarify that the term interpretative in this method does not refer to hermeneutics in the sense of applying an external interpretative framework or theological system to the text. The method belongs to exegetical analysis, specifically within the grammatical analysis of narrative discourse. Okay, we are still in exegetical process, not jumping to hermeneutics. So the interpretation or the meaning of the passage arises from the text itself, not from assumptions brought to it. Because of this, the interpretative narrative method trains readers to read attentive and active, to remember what has already been presented, and to follow how meaning is constructed across the narrative. It supports active reasoning by requiring the reader to connect the trace development and allow the narrative to interpret itself. So this is very important. The narrative demands us to connect and to vinculate and to be eager to remember previous context within the same Bible book or the following, and so how we can trace those connections. So this is why this method is important for active reasoning. The reader must pay attention, remember what has already been presented, and allow earlier narrative elements to shape the understanding of later ones. Meaning is not accessed instantly. So it is built progress with throughout a progress. Forgetting earlier details disrupts interpretation, while attentiveness allows reasoning to remain active and cumulative. Within this flow of thought, conditional sentences function as narrative sensors. They alert the reader that something significant is being disclosed and that relationship between ideas, actions, and outcomes must be examined carefully. This condition signal that reality is being framed. If this is the case, then something follows. They warn the reader to slow down, to observe, and test how the narrative itself is guiding interpretation. In this way, conditional sentences support the interpretative narrative method by sustaining attention and activating reasoning. They help the reader trace how meaning is constructed within the text, moving between concrete narrative action and abstract conceptual understanding without imposing external definitions, but by allowing the narrative to interpret itself. So, for example, we have here Luke 22. Oh, all chapter, yes, all chapter. So stop the video to read Luke 22. Use your own Bible because this is very small letter. So you will rest your sight a little bit, your eyes, and then come back. Then come back after you have read Luke 22, and we will discuss how the interpretative narrative is present here. Okay, once you have read it, we see that in that Luke 22 is a clear instance of interpretative narrative that actively engages the reader reasoning. Did you notice it? The disciples begin to begin by arguing who among them is the greatest. Who? Exposing a common human assumption that greatness is tied to status and recognition. Jesus responds by redefining greatness, teaching that true greatness is not measured by power or rank, but by humble service. This teaching establishes a condition. If greatness is redefined, then our understanding and expectation must change accordingly. And that is exactly what Luke does. Luke does not leave this teaching at the level of abstraction. He immediately carries it forward through narrative action. At the Lord's Supper, at the Last Supper, Jesus gives himself for others, embodying the very definition of greatness he has just articulated verses moments before. In Gethsemane, in the Garden of Gethsemane, and in his interactions with the disciples, he continues to demonstrate humility, obedience, and care. The reader is invited to remember the earlier teaching and interpret these events in its light. Through this sequence, Luke trains the reader in active reasoning, meaning the meaning is built cumulatively. Teaching leads to action, and action confirms teaching. Luke both explains and demonstrates what servant leadership looks like, guiding the reader to connect ideas, retain conclusions, and apply them. Greatness is thus understood not as a title or position, but as concrete self given action, and this is discovered through the attentive and active reasoning of the chapter. So, at the heart of interpretative narrative are several key characteristics that we could have seen in Luke 22, but here I am just summarizing them. First, it possesses internal meaning. The interpretation is not superimposed from the outside like a moral lecture or in our deductive study, but is built into the way the story is told, using techniques like plot, emphasis, narrative parallelism to unfold its sense. Okay, here I am. So second, the the interpretative narrative is marked by selectivity. The narrator makes conscious choices about which events to include, their order, and how they are presented, crafting a particular version of reality that communicates specific themes and values. And the last one, it is purpose driven. Every element of the story aims to move the audience towards a particular understanding, whether about identity, morality, or the meaning of existence itself. So these are just few characteristics that we can be tracing, but we have to be very intentional. As I have repeated these two keywords, active with a reason active and very attentive reasoning. If not, we are going to forget and we are just going to live the little moment and we are going we might be forgetting that it is more information that we have been carrying on, especially the writer has carried on. Okay, and with this we conclude this section of the lesson. And I am inviting you, I'm asking you seriously to read chapters 16 and 17, Luke 16 and 17, the whole chapters, because we are going to go step by step of how the interpretative narrative and the conditional sentences are going to be helpers in grasping the meaning and even the interpretation of the passages. Okay, thank you for coming very well prepared to the next section.